PC Radio. I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Joe, it's time to go, go, go. You're just so status quo. Both friend and foe know you're a no-go, Joe.
Come on, man.
PC Radio Show with Stu and Rich.
And Richard Leonard, obviously you can see, if you're watching us on the OpsLens app, is not present today. We had some storms roll through, and if you've been listening to the show, you know that we've been having, there's this big black cloud that just kind of hovers over the Patriotically Correct radio show. And it's got to be representative, in spirit, kind of like to the same black cloud that's hovering over all of us in the United States today. But the technical difficulties today that Richard is having is that there was some storms that rolled through and knocked out all the power from his studio, so he's unable to remotely join us. We thank God that I'm still able to sit here and talk all of my crap and expose truths for what they are. The world today, over the weekend, as you saw, nothing has changed here. They're rioting again in Portland, where feckless leadership and intentional poor decision-making is being done there. The mayor's house being taken by storm. Excuse me. And as a result of that, they're demanding that the mayor must resign. As of right this minute, it's unclear as to whether or not the mayor has resigned. We're going to get into that as the show moves on, and if that news breaks, we'll bring it to you here live on Patriotically Correct Radio. Over the weekend, I was taking some time to do some reflecting on our history, because who we are as a nation is directly affected, or is directly representative, rather, of what we were in our past. We are a nation that rejected slavery. We are a nation that has rejected inequality. We are a nation that has rejected oppression. We are a nation that has rejected dictatorships, communism, fascism, socialism. And we are a nation who has sent many, many young men and women to their death in hellhole countries across the world to shed blood on battlefields and literally die in piles of spent shell casings to protect those freedoms. That system of equality, that system that allows anybody to come here legally from anywhere in the world and seek the American dream, entrepreneurship, business ownership, a career, schooling, education. No matter who they are, whether they're black or white, whether they're Republican or Democrat, whether they're conservative, libertarian, or liberal, whether they're gay or straight, no matter what God they believe in, that they'll be accepted here. I am not denying that there is ignorant bigotry in the United States. I'm not denying that there is ignorant racism and racist people in our country. But the fact that over 1 million people documented legally enter this country every year to flee the oppression that they have in these third world countries, where police are indeed corrupt, where the police indeed do work for the government, where they're weaponized, where they're used to instill fear in the citizens of that country. They flee these countries to come here. It's unclear how many undocumented come here, because obviously they're undocumented. But we can estimate that an equal amount, about 1 million or more, come here illegally every year for the same reasons. A lot of them say that they're seeking asylum. And they're seeking asylum for good reasons. They're seeking asylum because they're trying to escape those very things. And so delving into the history of our country, although be it sometimes painful, is very important for us to take a look at. Because I've said before that we as individuals, not even as a country, as a people, but we as individuals are representative and a reflection of our individual upbringings. The way that we were treated by mom and dad. The lessons that we learned from school teachers, when teachers used to objectively open textbooks and teach us the history of our country without a political agenda and without weaponizing the educational system for a political gain. It's no secret that today's, quote, educators have adopted a theory of social justice in the name of racism. I was looking at a picture here from just over the weekend that 3 people who have been arrested in Portland. Hannah Rose Fuster is a preschool teacher in Portland. Rebecca Saunders is a social work graduate student from Portland. And Jacob Soto is a band teacher in the Portland School District. Those are 3 people who have been arrested for rioting, for inciting riot, for arson, for vandalism, for criminal activity, for unlawful assembly on the streets of Portland. These are people who are educating your kids. Wake up. Be aware. When you go to vote, don't think that just the national vote for the President of the United States is important. Think about things all the way down to your school boards. It's very important. The future of our country relies solely on those who we trust with our kids every day when they go to what is supposed to be a learning environment. They're now burning down cities. They're storming the mayor's house in Portland. They're burning down police precincts. They are vowing to make every white man, woman, and child bow down with their fist in the air before them and apologize for their whiteness, should they be white children. These things have happened in our history before. And so looking back in our history, like I told you that I believe is so important, I came across something from Ronald Reagan, quite arguably one of the most iconic and best presidents for equality in the history of our country. He took a stand for something, and that's why people revolted. We didn't see it every 20 seconds on the news, and the reason we didn't see it every 20 seconds is because we didn't have these things. Little mini computers that we carry in our pockets, on our hips, in our jackets, in our purses. We didn't have the information superhighway readily available at our fingertips, and we relied on people like Walter Cronkite to read us the news every night, which is exactly what he did. Journalists then were objective people that brought you the news. Any subjective commentary or opinion was left to the dinner table of American men and women who were raising families in their homes. They could talk about the things that they had seen on the news and decide for themselves how they felt about that news. Ronald Reagan from our past could have been talking about today when he said these things.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything. Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant, it's just that they know so much that isn't so. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or, as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the President as our moral teacher and our leader, and he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses.
And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're able to reach the masses now more by social media to perpetuate narratives, whether they're true or false. And they will perpetuate these narratives in order to make you feel a certain way. They've gone so far as to actually incite riots. Governor Tony Evers from Wisconsin knew damn well that in the wake of the shooting of a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin, especially in the wake of George Floyd, that there would be unrest. Rather than using the opportunity to calm that unrest and ensure a full investigation, Evers took to social media and called it a racist murder. In short, and I'm paraphrasing, politicians from all over the country are using things like Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, to incite violence, to literally assist or aid in the tearing down of their cities, the condemnation and indictment of officers that so bravely serve our country, and run directly towards gunfire to protect those that they don't even know. We're going to indict every single officer on the streets of the United States for the actions of one or two bad apples. And I'm not suggesting that the officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin was wrong. We now know that the suspect was carrying a knife. We now know that the knife was recovered from the floorboard of the vehicle, which obviously could have been dropped there, and there are images of him carrying this knife as he's walking toward a vehicle. So let me suggest the alternate headline rather than officer shoots unarmed black man. What about the headline, 3 kids murdered and father commits suicide due to inaction by police officers? If he's able to get into that vehicle and drive away with 3 minor children after a domestic dispute, he's being pursued by the police. He has several felony warrants for his arrest, including for rape, and he just wants to end everything. It's not an unlikely story. It happens all the time. On the streets of Minneapolis just recently, something you may not have heard in the news, a father went to the home to grab his kids in a joint custody type situation, and upon arriving there, the kids came out to give him a big hug, and he shot him dead in the face. When one of them was squirming in the snow, he turned around and repeatedly shot him in the back and in the back of the head to kill him. Then went in the house and killed their mother with a knife. He gutted her. You don't hear about these things, but what you do hear about is the injustices that politicians claim are plaguing the police departments across the country and our country in and of itself. Here to discuss that with us is Lindsay Ferris Martin. She's a social media consultant with Peck Avenue Social in St. Paul, Minnesota. She's a St. Paul resident who actually had some dealings of her own with recent violence. Maybe she can tell us about that. Lindsay, welcome to PC Radio. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this exact subject. Yes, our family has been victimized, not just our family, but our neighborhood, and of course all of St. Paul has been victimized by historic levels of gun violence starting last year. We're now into our second year surpassing historic levels that were set last year. With our family, specifically in our neighborhood, we are the victim of 2 drive-by shootings in our neighborhood. And then my daughter, who goes to school in Frogtown, her schoolmate's father was the Good Samaritan shot in gunfire last year when he went to go help someone he thought was in need with their vehicle, and they turned around and shot him. And just about, not even 7 days later, there was another gun issue, a shooting issue that happened in St. Paul, but this time it was a person who hit a parked squad car, ran into the back of them. As soon as the officer got out, the man who hit the squad car also got out and charged at him with a knife, just charged at him. And then the officer tried to get behind his vehicle, tried to fight him off, and ultimately had to shoot the person with the knife. And that was only 7 days apart. At a community safety meeting that happened right after the police shooting, the whole community came out saying there was injustice, and the shooting of the knife wielding individual was uncalled for because he was a black man and the officer happened to be white.
Yeah.
When the body cam came out, we realized that was not, the body cam footage came out, we realized that wasn't the case at all, and the police officer was defending himself. The point I'm making here is that the shooting of our Good Samaritan went unnoticed.
Right.
A family was devastated. A community was devastated. And this is somebody who went out to help a neighbor. We didn't hear anything about that, but we did hear a lot about the officer-involved shooting.
And we're hearing this stuff through social media by people who are elected politicians or quote-unquote officials who are supposed to be leaders, leading an entire community, but rather have a very radical, I would say, I mean, there's no twisting or mincing words here, very radical political agendas that we feel and that we can see are self-centered. And they're self-serving. These people who are elected to represent all of St. Paul, for example, your mayor over there, he has a way of being very tricky with his verbiage, and he's promised certain things in St. Paul when it comes to policing, but these things never get addressed. Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, depending on what platform our elected representatives are using, and I use those words very strategically. They are not our leaders. They are our elected representatives. Our mayor is to work on our behalf of the city. Depending on what platform he's using, whether it's a national platform or a local platform, will really determine what kind of buzzwords or trending hashtags he's going to use to craft his speech and his conversations. So, for example, in a news report with CNN, the mayor bragged that after spikes in shots fired last year, again, historic levels of gun violence we should use, he bragged that he reduced our police department strength. And keep in mind, he had been doing that the year before, last year, and now looking forward to 2021 as well. But when he spoke to the Star Tribune, a local platform, he said that he was considering bringing a supplemental budget proposal to our city council, depending on how our garbage situation turned out last year, right? Because that was a huge issue with our budget last year and how we were going to increase our taxes or what have you.
Right.
The interesting thing about those statements is, one, the huge contradiction, depending on which platform he's using. And nobody's checking the facts. Nobody's catching on that there's this double speak happening, right?
And these things they're very easily found by a simple search of archives from the Star Tribune or from the Communist News Network, or from, it's really easy to catch these people. And what we're finding is that when they're caught, they don't even address it. It's like it's shamelessly right in your face. They don't care that they lied. They know that there's recording devices in the room when they say these things because they're doing a damn interview.
They don't care, because what's going to happen is in 2 seconds later, there's going to be something else in somebody else's news feed that's going to distract them from what happened. So they don't care about going back and correcting. So when the mayor spoke about the supplemental budget and crafting these new initiatives that cost us $1.7 million for research-based initiatives on crime prevention, he spent $1.7 million on these research-based initiatives, but not one was ever started. So he spent $1.7 million of our budget, but nothing has been put into place from his standpoint. But keep in mind, what we're not hearing from him is how our St. Paul Police Department is actually a national example for reform, and they've been doing it for the last 4 years. So our police department has already understaffed and under-resourced because our mayor has claimed and bragged to everybody how he's been dismantling our police department. So understaffed, under-resourced, our St. Paul Police Department has actually gone out and hired a huge diversity academy, right? We're recruiting a lot of people that our neighbors will recognize and see in their faces. Oh, that's me. This could be me one day. So we have a really great diverse academy and officers. We're doing outreach programs every week in the summertime. This year is a little bit different because of COVID-19. We do at-risk outreach for children of families during the holidays, and all of these things are already in place, and we've already been doing. But yet the mayor's saying, oh, no, we're going to do some new research-based initiatives, and we're going to spend $1.7 million on it. But then that never happens.
You know, it's interesting because under-budgeted, under-resourced, understaffed law enforcement agencies across the country is not a rarity. It's happening not just in St. Paul, it's happening in Minneapolis. But when you're actually taking $1.75 million and you're going to spend it, and nobody knows where it's spent, can't some of the onus of that be put back on the citizens of St. Paul? Certainly, there are budget meetings that people can attend. So what's going on with the budget meetings or the open public meetings in St. Paul that these citizens aren't being heard about their concerns and there's no accountability?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up. So this year is going to bring up some new hurdles, right? Because the city council isn't meeting in person and the public is not allowed into these buildings. So our budget proposal is actually being done on Wednesday at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. online. And select people will get to be heard during this budget presentation, this public hearing, for 3 minutes. And we don't know who's selecting these people to present this year.
Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, right. Well, it's interesting which buckets do you have to answer. I filled out the form, right? I know that I'm not going to get picked, but you pick a bucket, whether you want to talk about encampments or technology budget or guaranteed income budget or public safety. And I guarantee you the public safety person is going to be really vetted, whoever gets to talk about that. And it's really going to be somebody that they know
Sure.
versus, or somebody who's pretty much in favor of whatever the mayor is presenting. So that's this year. But even last year, when we were able to go to city council and city hall and have our voice heard, again, it was the same thing. You've got 3 minutes and one person got to speak. That's not enough time, And so, yes, the budget to an extent is out there for people to review. But there's ways around to even manipulate the budget for the public eye, right? Money that goes into our general fund has a different set of rules, right? So our money goes in there and it can be transferred to any other platform or organization without our knowledge. Mm-hmm. It goes for funding private developments like the Ford development project, right? We just spent $20 million of our public funds to help develop that project, right? We didn't have a say in that. And that was our public dollars. When it comes to guaranteed income, we may be funding that after the CARES Act is over, too.
I just want to say that, this goes along with the silencing of people or a particular group of people seems to be going on. Okay, so let's just take Antifa, for example. They represent a very, very small group of America. I mean, they appear on social media and they appear on certain news networks to be very organized, very structured, very strategic, and very large. But the fact of the matter is, with 300 million people here, they represent a very, very small portion. So the large portion is being suppressed. They're being silenced. They're being shadow banned on Twitter. They're being fact-checked on Facebook. Do we know about the algorithms of social media? And we're going to rely on your expertise here to tell us this in about 1 minute. Do we know about these algorithms and what are the code words or how Facebook is identifying me as a particular person who believes in individual liberties and freedoms and the United States and its greatness versus this apologetic condemnation of Americans, particularly white Americans, who should be so sorry about themselves and that they should not be able to express their opinions. Can you opine on that?
I think that's a really cute question, and in the sense that, unfortunately, we don't have access to those algorithms. We can guess what they are, and we can guess by trial and error which keywords have been successful and which get us blocked and banned, right? Or which all of a sudden go against community standards. But even when you've been blocked or whatever for community standard violations, you can ask, like, what did I do wrong, or whatever else, and you're not going to get an answer.
No, never.
So we can try to guess all we want, but nobody really knows, and that's their proprietary information that they don't have to share with us, right? So again, I always say that, these are our lives, but technically our lives belong to Facebook and they belong to Google and the algorithms that they set for us.
Lindsay Ferris-Martin, an expert in social media and a consultant with Peck Avenue Social in St. Paul, Minnesota. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here, and would you mind coming back in the future? I mean, this is a very hot topic.
I would love to, and if I can leave you with this quick little statement, when it comes to our safety and the way that we're living our lives and the way that we are in our community right now, we really have to think we are literally like one autocorrect, one typo, and like one 10-second clip away with like no context away from a war zone.
That's
and we
right.
have no protection to protect us.
I gotta go. You're right about that. More PC Radio right after this. Stick around.
We will force votes. We will not stop. Any Republican senator is part of the cover-up.
What the f?
Impeachment.
This is madness.
The PC Radio Show with Stu and Rich. Back in a minute.
Hey, it's Stu Peters here for Johnson Jewelers. And Johnson Jewelers is located in Woodbury, Minnesota. We all know that because I've said that, and you're all listeners, and you're addicted to the PC Radio Show. Just as much as you could be addicted to that custom feeling of jewelry around your neck, your wrist, or on your ring finger. It doesn't matter what it is that you're looking to do. Johnson Jewelers does all of this customly, okay? Customly. That is a word. I know it is because I said so. Johnson Jewelers can be reached worldwide at johnsonjewelers.com. And the reason that that's important is because you might not live in Minnesota or even close to Woodbury, Minnesota if you do live here. So what you need to do is you need to visit them at johnsonjewelers.com. With a few emails, maybe a couple of exchanged phone calls, you can decide on what works for you. Maybe you have grandpa's old birthstone. Maybe you have a pendant that grandma used to wear. You keep it preciously locked away, and you should because it's valuable to you, and in our world, you have to keep things locked up. But maybe you want to wear that thing and bring grandma or grandpa closer to you. Excuse me. Johnson Jewelers can make that happen, and the only way to make that happen is by giving them a phone call or visiting them online at johnsonjewelers.com. Johnson Jewelers, an official sponsor of the PC Radio Show. Visit them today at johnsonjewelers.com, johnsonjewelers.com. That is johnsonjewelers.com.
Broadcasting live on the Ops Lens app, iHeartRadio, Mojo 50 Radio, and online worldwide at thepcradioshow.com.
That's a nice middle section you have there.
Yeah, I'm standing up because I have to poop really bad.
Oh my God.
So you're going to have poop stains?
I might. I just might.
It looks like you're expecting. It actually comes to a point.
He's doing cartwheels in there.
Twitter blew up. More offensive than a presidential tweet.
Russia, China, Japan, Mexico, all countries will respect us far more than they do under past administrations.
PC Radio with Stu and Rich, Mojo 50 Radio.
And in the first half, you know that Richard was not here. He wasn't present because he was having some technical difficulties. But whoops, look at that. Look who's here. My God, I mean, I feel like it's such an honor to be blessed with your presence here in the second half of the Patriotically Correct radio show on this Monday afternoon. And I tell you, the world is blowing up around us, Richard, not only at your studio with the technical difficulties. You guys had like a Category 5 hurricane roll through there with all kinds of unexplainable technical difficulties being presented as a result. Did you really have storms over there?
I didn't think so, but I could sleep through hurricane and not even know anything happened. But apparently we had some tragedy happen.
I mean, I heard a little bit of thunder overnight. We're not separated by too much mileage, but what we got had to have been relatively similar to what you got. We do know that weather can be spotty, and I'll never claim to be a professional or a meteorologist by any means, but what other job can you be wrong literally 90% of the time and still hold a job? I mean, imagine if we did PC radio like meteorologists deliver the weather. Yeah, there's going to be a chance of this and a chance of that, so I don't know. I guess that is kind of what we do here on PC radio. We were talking in the first half, Richard, as you probably heard, with Lindsay Ferris-Martin. She's a social media consultant, and she was talking to us about the way that certain messages get out there, or the way that certain messages don't get out there. And what I was referring to by that is being shadow banned or by being blocked. And, people can hear us for now on iHeartRadio. They can hear us for now on Mojo 50 Radio. They can hear us for now on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podbean. Basically, anywhere that you can pick up, low-budget afternoon radio programs, if you're not tuning in live on one of the terrestrial radio stations that we are syndicated on and broadcast to throughout the nation, but you're addicted to PC radio, well, we can't blame you for that. And we know that you want to come in and listen to these wonderful opinions and all of the fact that is delivered here, because we will never apologize, Richard, for being relentless seekers of the truth. You know that.
Absolutely, I do.
And so, but all of those things are at risk of going away. They're already showing that by shadow banning people on Twitter, by fact checking people, even though it could be factual. They're fact checking people on Facebook and deleting your stuff. They've already demonstrated that by, what they've done to us, to this show on YouTube, by deleting altogether certain episodes and saying that we're depicting things in a disrespectful tone. When we're showing a police-involved shooting, for example, and then we're giving a factual narrative on what took place and then speculating on what might have been. So from the very beginning in Kenosha, Wisconsin, for example, I said to you, it's very possible that there was a weapon in that car. And what I said in the first part of the show is, okay, so the cop shot him 7 times in the back. We've now learned that there was a knife in the car. We've seen pictures of him carrying that knife. It wasn't just some regular old knife either. This is one of these knives he turns around and he uses this on. He's going to gut you right there on the scene like a white-tailed deer. And now we'll probably get banned by PETA because it's insensitive to harvest animals. I got a phone call, a little personal story here. When I was about 16 years old, I was deer hunting with my dad. And I had just got done taking a doe. And by that, I mean shooting and killing a deer. And I had gutted the deer, and I was dragging the deer, and my cell phone rang. And it was some 888 number or whatever it was. And I'm like, who in the hell would be calling? I mean, it was early in the morning. And it was a weekend, no doubt, because it was opening deer hunting. So that was a Saturday morning. So I answer the phone, and it's this woman from PETA. And she wants my support. And I told her, well, you know what? I would be really happy to talk to you. But I just got done shooting and slaying a white-tailed deer. I've gutted her out. My hands are full of blood, and I'm dragging her currently to where I'm going to hang her so that she can bleed out and dry out. And needless to say, the phone call was disconnected pretty immediately. But one of the places that they cannot censor us is on the OpsLens app. So you got to get over there and download this app. This is not only an app where you can watch us do our radio show, which I don't know why you would want to do that, but you can actually get involved with independent journalism, because as we know, independent journalism is going to be the only way to actually get the truth out nowadays, because the mainstream media is so in the tank for a certain and particular narrative that unless your independent journalism matches that narrative, it will completely be censored and go away. So get over there to the OpsLens app, because now you can take this, your cell phone, I'm showing it, I'm holding it up for those of you who are already smart and viewing us on the OpsLens app. You can take this and you can go record actual factual events as they unfold in your city or your town that you know is going to go unreported or ignored by the media because it's exposing truth. And God dang you if you want to expose that Antifa or Black Lives Matter are actually domestic terrorists terrorizing the streets in your town or your city. It's happening in Kenosha. It can happen in your town too. So make sure that you get over there and download the OpsLens app. There's my shameless plug for those people over at OpsLens. But they take care of us. We take care of them, much like American Pride Roasters coffee. I see that you're drinking it this morning. Mine just came. I prefer Ron's Sexual Chocolate. I did hear that Izzo, on the night show, Dominic Izzo, if you haven't tuned into Mojo 50 Radio in the evening time, I would encourage you to listen to the rants of Izzo. He's on for a 2-hour show. Where he never stops, man. The guy is relentless in his pursuit of the truth and facts as well. Some very riveting guests over there. But I heard that he has a new blend. I'm wondering when American Pride Roasters is going to come out with our blend. What do you think that would be? Izzo's is called the Rage Blend. What do you suppose ours would be called, Rich?
Oh, I could speculate that it would be... I don't know, the PC Relentless Blend or something like that. I'm not a good marketing guy.
Yeah, that was a complete fail. Anyway, the other way that you can always connect with us, by the way, is on Twitter, for now, at least. But the only way that you'll be able to get us, because you won't see us out there, because Twitter will never allow us to be exposed. But if you're listening to this show, make sure that you get over and follow us at Correct Radio. At Correct Radio, that's the show in and of itself. If you want to follow that guy over there, he's at Real Richard J, right? Middle name is James, right. Rick James, all right? At Real Richard J. I think you were actually named after him, were you not?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I was.
Yep, by your dad. And he's the one that really wanted that. I remember the story. Or you can follow me at Real Stu Peters. Another way that you can reach us is by calling us, because the phone lines are always open at 1-877-45-WARRIOR. I love that phone number. 877-45-WARRIOR. If you're a true warrior, you can definitely call us. Let's go to the phone line now. I think we have somebody holding, and we're going to take a gamble here. No swearing, please. Line 1. PC Radio, hello.
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
Hey, good afternoon. What's going on?
Oh.
Hey, just had a couple of questions and comments for the Daily Dilemma.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's another thing, too. The Daily Dilemma, that's something that we're going to be featuring, and you're okay, sir, being here at this time, but we are going to be featuring the Daily Dilemma as a post show, which is going to be completely uncensored, completely unfiltered, totally offensive, and will most definitely be banned and blocked from every platform in the world, but you'll have a very short opportunity right after the Patriotically Correct Radio's regular programming time in your city, or depending on where you're getting us. About 10-minute segment after that, we're going to go after the Daily Dilemma. So if you have a dilemma of your own, make sure to go see us on Twitter at Correct Radio and use the hashtag Daily Dilemma. Sir, what's up? What's on your mind?
Well, I kind of wanted to get you guys' take on this this term that's being tossed around now about the lack of police leadership, predominantly in these liberal, traditional strongholds, like your Minneapolis, your Portland, your Seattles, in which, where they're seeing, well, let's call it what it is, these riots.
Right.
This isn't protesting anymore. It's gone way past that. This is an all-out riot. And, it seems to be this term now where it's this failure of police leadership is what's leading to this escalation of the violence in the streets. You've got police chiefs backing down and surrendering portions of their city. You've got police chiefs surrendering buildings. It's just my thought on this, guys, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, is that these police chiefs, they haven't been calling the shots for quite some time. Mm-hmm. This is the mayor of Minneapolis. He's not the one making the critical decisions in Minneapolis anymore. This is a higher up. This is your political parties, and that this isn't police leadership. This is calculated and well thought out choices from politicians such as the mayor of Minneapolis.
So what you're saying is you're saying that this is not a lack of leadership, but rather this is intentional, calculated decision making in an effort to drive a narrative. Yes, I absolutely 100% would agree with that. And
well, right.
we see it in every, like you said, Democratic stronghold. It's no secret to anybody that, Rich, and if you have a city in mind, if you've been able to find one that's led by a Republican that is currently burning or on fire and looting is able to happen, and these a-holes that are doing this, they know where to go, and they know where not to go. Where not to go would be an example, would be down in Lee County, Florida, where the sheriff specifically said, I have encouraged my citizens to arm themselves, to use their weapons, and that any threat that is brought to their homes to use superior firepower to blow them back and blow them out of your house and defend yourself and your property and your family. These people, these assholes from Antifa and Black Lives Matter are not going to places like Lee County, Florida and starting this crap. They're doing this only in liberal cities where they know for certain that their illegal activity will go without the threat of arrest, and where they're allowed to shamelessly destroy their own cities. In many cases, sir, I don't believe that a lot of these people are from the cities that they're destroying.
Well, I agree with you 100%, Stu. And I think that it goes to a deeper or a different level on this, is that these choices that these politicians are making, this is an agenda driven, and not just in the sense of political party, but in my thoughts is that these politicians, they're jockeying for a position. I really do think that they're seeing this in terms of when this Trump era ends and they believe that their liberal Democratic candidates will then become our leaders and in power. Now they're going to start jockeying for position in that, and that's where these choices are. And it's almost like with these leaders is they've got to outdo the next guy to try and catch the attention of their DNC, superiors and higher ups.
Rich?
I agree. I agree. And I think that one thing that is a complete tragedy amongst everything else that's happening is that nobody's talking about the business owners. Nobody's talking about, for example, in Minneapolis last week, when, all this rioting and destruction started, nobody's talking about the fact that hundreds of people woke up on Thursday morning and didn't have a job to go to. And everyone's got car payments and rent and mortgages. And so when we talk about leadership amongst our communities, whether it be city, state, or county leadership, who's actually advocating for these people that are losing everything? People have to send their kids to school, put gas in their cars to go to work, and now there's no way for them to make an income. And then they get a measly extra $300 a month in unemployment, which I think is being abused by the same assholes that are breaking windows and starting stores on fire. And so it's my opinion that political leadership in this country, all the way down to the city level, is no longer about the people. And like you said, sir, it's about who can beat out the next guy and win the most votes, or who can pander to the leadership of, if that's what you want to call it, of the DNC or the DFL party that's going to get them back in office.
To your point, Rich,
it's a damn shame.
Yeah, it is. And I was looking for the story while you were talking, because it reminded me of there's a restaurant in the Loring Park neighborhood of Minneapolis called Lotus. And this has been family owned and operated for many, many years. And by the way, owned by a minority family. And during these riots, this violent crusade, if you will, by these radical insurgents, let's call them what they are, they busted through the glass, busted through his door. He was inside. He was inside the restaurant. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be there to show his face because he's a minority. He wanted to be there to deter this from this destruction from happening to his business. These people are foreign nationals who came to our country in pursuit of the American dream and invested everything that they had to start this business. And when they finally breached the door and he was inside, and this has happened twice now to him, by the way, and they rebuilt the first time. When they breached the doors this last time and they came in, he was inside. He was begging with them. He was pleading with them, please don't. Please, please don't. And right in front of him, this asshole smiles at him and throws a rock or a boulder or a brick through a family picture of this man and his family, and then laughs at him and calls him an MRFer, right? As they proceed to then burn his place to the ground and rob and pillage and steal everything. These are the people that you're not hearing about unless you're seeing about it in a tweet by somebody who works as an independent journalist. And then that tweet will obviously immediately be shadow banned so that only a small group of people can see it. But these are the stories that the media is not grabbing a hold of. Sir, you called with the question. I mean, you can opine on that a little bit. Go ahead. Be a contributor to PC Radio here. Shed whatever light you have on that. Are you seeing the same thing? And why do you think this is? You suggested that there's this intentional, calculated decision. I mean, it feels to me, call me a conspiracy theorist, but it seems to me, Rich and Sir, that we are only moments away, one tweet away, like Lindsay Ferris Martin was saying, we are one tweet or one post away from an all-out civil war.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm quite the expert that your earlier guest would be about the social media and the bannings and the hidden agenda of that, but I think that just in terms of the mainstream media, I think it would be refreshing for one outlet, one of your mainstream media outlets, to stand up and just tell the truth. No one on this planet says that Black lives don't matter. That's not a thing. Everyone on this planet is in agreement that they do matter. Mm-hmm. And I think the irresponsibility right now, and a prime example of this, was the murder suspect in Minneapolis that committed suicide.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where was the journalistic integrity instead of just showing this clip and saying how horrible this is, because it is, and regardless of how you look at it, any loss of life is going to be a tragedy.
Right, especially when you're able to view it.
One of them to stand up, for one outlet to stand up and say, hey, this man was a wanted murder suspect.
They're not going to do it.
This should unilaterally be something that everybody can agree on is, dude, we don't want murder suspects on our streets, and especially an armed one. An armed murder suspect in the downtown area or some well-populated area of Minneapolis. You can tell just by the number of people near this building. Mm-hmm. And as the police close in, from the brief video that I saw, long before they even get within, a 21 feet type of scenario, he's got that firearm up and he's ended the day for himself. And
right.
The fact that not one news organization can come out and put that type of spin on it is that, look, we should all agree. This is somebody we don't want on our streets, but instead they're going to promote this and turn it into this propaganda. And then what happens? Boom, we're rioting again.
Yes.
Our great Minnesota State Patrol has got to bring their team down to quell this. And I think that there is zero integrity, accountability in the mainstream media.
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because you're making a lot of really good points, and I don't want you to overload our listeners with just too much information at one time, because I think we should dissect some of this stuff. And I'm not saying that our listeners are incapable, because certainly we have a very intelligent listening base. But what I do want to do is do them the favor of comparing that. So what you said was very important. You said nobody ended this guy's life except for him. The police were not involved in ending his life. The police did good police work, great police work, and within 4 days of a homicide, were able to track a suspect down and put themselves in the same place as this person. As they came out, he knew it was over. He knew it was over for him. He knew that he was going to jail. He knew that he was going to prison. Okay? By committing suicide, that is the selfish admission of guilt, if there ever was one. So this guy's going to prison. He knows that. He decides prison isn't for me. I'm not really for all the ass rape and everything else, so I'm going to just off myself. So he put a gun in his mouth and he blew his wig back. Okay, so now that is an indication that somebody who's involved in a very traumatic situation is willing to end it all by taking their own life. We can all agree on that as a fact. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would agree.
All right. We see it at least 22 times a day. That's been the number for veterans of our military. I think the number is significantly higher than that. Richard would be able to tell us a little bit more on that, being that he's currently serving in the United States Army. But I think that number is high. I wear a shirt all the time, 22 a day. We oftentimes, in our history, you're a great veterans advocate, blah, blah. Okay, so putting that aside, we all know that people in desperate situations do desperate things. They either try to, or say they're going to, or actually do take their own lives. That is a real thing. Nobody can argue that. So let's take ourselves to Kenosha, Wisconsin. You have Mr. Blake, who's a suspect in a domestic dispute, a domestic abuse situation. He's there and currently involved in a very emotional situation. He has felony warrants for his arrest, which certainly he knows that he has felony warrants for his arrest. One of those being for rape. I'll tell you what. People who are convicted and sent to prison of a crime like that don't do very well. And speaking of ass rape, they're a prime candidate for something like that, okay? That is a good point. Now, I will say that in a situation like that, where he knows that he's going to jail, he knows that probably going to prison, he has a significant criminal history involving assaults on police, domestic abuse, criminal sexual conduct. He's got 3 kids in the car. The police are there to arrest him. He's already fought with them. He's got a knife in his hand. A taser deployment was ineffective as far as early reports that I have never been able to confirm that. But let's just say that happened or didn't happen is irrelevant, because he's not responding to police direction. He's not complying with the police. He has shown that he is incapable or unwilling of being de-escalated, okay? Now he's going to get in this car. We know that because it's a fact. We've seen him on video going to the car with the knife in his hand, which was also confirmed by the Wisconsin Department of Justice to have later been found on the floorboard. I don't know if that was a second knife or if that's where the knife that was in his hand fell when he was shot by the brave officer and the heroic actions of split-second decision-making to end a situation. But is it a conspiracy theory, or is it an educated assumption to arrive at the conclusion that the alternate headline could have simply been Man gets in vehicle with 3 children, crashes. 3 children dead, suspect dead. Or, really take it to the next level, 3 children found dead by homicide, suspect committed suicide after inaction by police. And then you'll blame the police regardless for the death of these 3 children because of their inaction. And none of the individual liability or responsibility will be held on Mr. Blake, because that wouldn't fit a particular narrative. And my evidence, and my evidence for suggesting that, you're right, it's a lose-lose, is by what's happening in the media now and on social media now, is that the death of that homicide suspect who took his own life selfishly on the streets of Minneapolis is still now being blamed on the Minneapolis police. Well, if they hadn't had their guns out, if they hadn't found him, if they hadn't located him, he would still be alive. And so you know what? We're going to riot anyways. Sir, this is a direct indication of what you're saying is absolutely true. The media is complicit in the actions that are purposefully taking place in elected government offices, from school boards to county commissioners to city councils to the mayor's office, and then weaponizing and politicizing police administrations throughout the country. It's insane. And they have, I'm going to let you get in here, Richard, I promise. I see you got to say something. But my final point to that is they have weaponized the law enforcement agencies in our country. If you don't believe in the same things that they believe in, or if you act to stop this carnage, this violence, this anarchy, this socialist fascist takeover, you will be arrested and criminally charged and imprisoned. Your freedom will be taken from you if you don't agree with this narrative. That is a place that we are at in America right now. Believe it or not, go look for it. And if you don't believe it, that means that you're living so far under a rock, or that you really know it, but you're lying to yourself. Richard.
Let's also not forget that it wasn't very long after these demonstrations started, the day that what's-his-name took his own life, that Black Lives Matter Minnesota put out the narrative that the gentleman did kill himself. So that just goes to show that all of these assholes that are burning and looting and all this other stuff, they don't care. They don't care about the gentleman that I shouldn't even call him a gentleman, the pond scum that killed somebody in a parking ramp and then took his own life. They don't care that he's white, black, Native American, Asian. It doesn't matter. What matters is that these folks want a reason and have now found a reason to destroy shit, steal shit,
watch your mouth,
and wreck people's lives. And so, yes, the media can be blamed, but furthermore, accountability needs to be given to the folks that are creating mayhem in the name of nothing more than I want to steal stuff. So if you're going to ride in the name of a man that killed himself that when the cops found him because he killed somebody else, and it's put out by the people you claim to follow, which is Black Lives Matter, that the police did not kill him and he killed himself, and you're still going to destroy a city anyway. Clearly you don't give a flying F about the people.
Hey, careful.
That you claim.
Yeah, and it's not only just about burning things down and destroying things and robbing and looting and stealing. You do have, a minority group of people, and by minority, I don't mean their color. I mean a small group, not the majority of people. The minority group of people that are out there taking advantage of this by going into the liquor store and grabbing their blunts and their 40s, or going into Ruth's Chris, the restaurant, and grabbing, bottles of liquor, or going into Foot Locker and grabbing the new Jordans. You do have that group of people. But I think what our caller is saying is that these intentional, calculated decisions that are being made at higher levels than, the chief's office or, the under chief that's currently working the situation, the higher levels of government and elected officials are using the media and are using social media to perpetuate a narrative that actually incites this kind of thing, and that these are calculated destructions by people who may not even be from here. There were a lot of California plates in town, while Minneapolis,
Dakota?
Yep, North Dakota, South Dakota. There were a lot of out-of-state plates in town, And I got to imagine that would produce a lot of arrests of people that have IDs that don't say Minnesota on them. And probably likely the same thing that you're finding in Kenosha or anywhere else where cities are burned. These are insurgents. These are groups of radicals that are directly taking over. It was your daily dilemma, sir. I'm going to let you have the last word here in a minute or so.
I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
I think that in terms of this going further is that, in my opinion, this is what's being incited here would be an attempt to completely deteriorate the fabrics of our society that hold us together as civilized people. And that I think that so we can get so far down this rabbit hole
it goes deep.
that this liberal media is going to be able to come back and these Democrats and say, look at how bad it is here now.
Yeah.
Come to us and we can invoke our new government. It's going to be a utopia. You're going to love it. And I just think that, and our media will go right along with it and keep perpetuating these myths and this straight up lie of this systemic racism in the police culture, because I know that you know a lot of cops, both of you know a lot of cops, and I challenge you to find one cop and all the cops you know that you can say that guy's for sure racist. It's not going to happen.
Richard, final word.
Thanks for calling.
He's always so profound. We got to get out of here. We're running out of time, but this has been the Patriotically Correct Radio Show. Make sure to download that OpsLens app and listen to us everywhere. More PC Radio coming at you tomorrow on the glorious Tuesday, where we're going to deal with more of this.
Broadcasting live from the highest cloud of privileged patriotism. The PC Radio Show is on Mojo 50 Radio.